radical gender bender activist types who've got center stage at the moment. So
yeah, Christine Summers has the same issue with that. She's a feminist, and she calls herself the factual feminist, and she pushes back against. And what her perspective is instead of embracing these false narratives and running with them as if they're the facts and just using that to reinforce your ideology, she's saying that does feminism a disservice. Let's look at the actual reality of the situation, and let's look at it from a balanced and objective perspective. And she gets so much hate for that.
Yeah.
The idea of being rational and objective.
Well, that's because as far as the postmodern social justice warriors are concerned, those are just code words for oppression. There's no object. You got to remember this with regards to having these sorts of arguments. When you say objective and rational, that's predicated on your implicit belief that there is such a thing as the objective and there is such a thing as rational. And the radical postmodernists, they do not buy that. Not at all. Not at all. As far as they're concerned, that's just another power game on your part. And built into the laws, like Bill C-16 in Canada now, and the same in the laws in New York City that govern the use of these gender pronouns, built into the law is the idea that there's no biological foundation for your identity, and that it's all purely subjective. They built that into the law. No objective reality, no biology. That's going to unfold over the next 20 years.
Or not. I mean, isn't it possible that these kind of discussions and that your videos and that all the people that agree and all the people that are pushing back against this can have some sort of an effect on this movement? Or do you think it's inevitable?
I would say yes. I mean,
are you cynical about the future?
No. I'm not at all cynical about the future. I am cynical about my ability to predict the future. Like when I was younger, much younger, back in the 1980s, I mean, I was very, very concerned about the possibility of nuclear war. But by about...
As we all were.
Yes, as we all were, yes. By about the mid-90s, though, I realized that things were in such a state of chaotic flux that the one thing I could be certain of was that no matter what I was afraid of with regards to the future, that isn't what was going to happen. And so I'm not cynical about the future, but I do believe that we're in an unprecedented state of indeterminacy and flux, and God only knows what could happen. I'm not, having said that, I wouldn't say I'm optimistic about the possibility that the universities will reform themselves, because I think that, well, even with the free speech debate that the University of Toronto hosted, they did 3 politically correct things during the debate, which I thought was really interesting, because if I would have staged the debate and been working on their side, let's say, I would have said, strategically speaking, no politically correct maneuvering during this debate, because all it's going to do is discredit us. But that isn't what happened. The university opened up by noting that the land on which we were having the debate was once property owned by the original Native Americans, which is something I find abhorrent, because on the one hand, we took it, and now on the other hand, we want to be friends. It's like, I don't think you get to have both sides of that moral play at the same time. But that's okay. That's how the university opened the debate. And then the next thing that happened was that they announced that there would be counselors waiting outside for anybody who was too traumatized by the contents of the discussion. And then they closed by announcing the Trans Day of Remembrance. But the reason I'm pointing this out is because it just shows you the fact that those things happened. They weren't even strategic. That's just how things are at the university. And they didn't even notice that people were going to turn themselves inside out, noticing that, saying, well, God, this is so biased, I can hardly believe it, which is exactly what happened. That's how saturated the universities are with this kind of thinking. And I don't have any idea what can reverse that. Collective decisions on the part of citizens, A, to stop sending their children there, B, to stop donating money and leaving it in wills, and C, to pressure politicians. Like, in my wilder moments, I think, cut the funding to the universities by 25%. And let the faculty have a war about what's important. And maybe what would be left over was what the university should be. But I really think it's, with the exception of the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics ends of things, I think it's come to that.
Don't you think that what you're doing when you're making these videos is, in a sense, branching out away from just a university and teaching online? Because you are.
Well, like I said, I think that you could make a case that that's where the university is, because that's where people are going just to get knowledge. They have no other motivation.
And this is a new thing, obviously. But at one point in time, so was the printing press.
Right.
And this new ability to disseminate information seems to me to be more effective, more accessible, more reasonable.
Yeah.
And it's entirely possible that what we're looking at is the future of education.
Maybe it could be. It could be. I mean, I've been spending a lot of time in the last month or so also concentrating on video editing. And so I spent about 10 hours this week editing about an hour discussion with a Russian Orthodox icon carver, weirdly enough, that I'm going to launch in the next 3 or 4 days. And we discussed things that are very image heavy. And so I've been cutting in a lot of images. And it is a technology that far supersedes what, I mean, I like lecturing, and lectures can be very effective. But basically with YouTube, you can turn your lecture into a documentary. And then instead of teaching 100 people, you can teach 50,000. It's like, that's a lot different. That's a lot different. And it ends up there permanently.
Yes, and that 50,000 can grow and grow and grow. And as it becomes more spread and shared, also the discussions about it become more varied.
Yeah. Well, more than 3 million people have watched some element of this in the last couple of months. And in September, I had about 9,000 subscribers. That took me about 2 years, 3 years to build. And one of my ambitions, which was kind of a tongue-in-cheek and comical ambition, is I thought, I bet I can get more subscribers in the next 3 years than the U of T has students. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. It's like all of a sudden I could have a body of students, let's say, that's larger than the entire university. It's like, well, just exactly what the hell does that mean? And the answer to that is, I don't know what that means. Who knows what that means? But one of the other perverse things that happened while I was being warned and cautioned by the university was that my subscriber base grew from 9,000 to 65,000. So now I have more YouTube subscribers than the University of Toronto has students. It's like, so then I think, well, hell, I could do a whole series on Solzhenitsyn. I could do a whole series on George Orwell. I could do a whole series on Aldous Huxley. I could do a whole series on archetypal biblical stories. And half of me thinks, well, if 50,000 people are going to watch each of those, and I can turn them into documentaries instead of just lectures, maybe that's what I should be doing. Like, I couldn't write a book with that much reach. That's crazy reach.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's revolutionary. I believe that. I believe it's revolutionary.
I believe it is too, and I believe no one saw it coming. And I think it's such a new thing that we're all just sort of starting to get a handle on how to use it and what it's capable of.
Yes, well, it was like the internet was for pornography. Well, that changed quick. And YouTube was for cute cat videos. And that changed quick too. You don't know what the technology is going to do.
Well, it's also, I don't know how much you've paid attention